As per usual, though, I have a serious question about food.
Ooh.
Megan.
Yes. Dave, yes. I'm ready.
Oreo double stuffs, vegan or not vegan?
I don't know about the double stuff, but regular Oreos are vegan.
How is the cream not? How is the cream vegan?
Because it's chemicals. It's chemical laden.
But chemical laden. Yeah, it's German.
A vegan favorite.
Yeah.
Schadenfreude. But if you want to get really, really technical, you could argue they're not vegan because of the sugar, because sugar is not inherently vegan. So,
but sugar comes from a plant.
Yes, but the filtering process is not always vegan. Sometimes they filter it using bone char.
Oh my God. Now I don't want to eat sugar.
That's why I buy vegan sugar.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
It's like when you learn when you were a kid, and I don't think that they make gelatin with the same stuff they used to, but it's like when you learn what Jell-O is made from, you're like, nope.
No, that's still what they make gelatin from, my friends.
Oh, no.
Surprise.
Well, I'm glad I don't eat fucking Jell-O anymore.
You might say you don't have a horse in the race anymore.
Correct.
Oh, Evan.
It was so bad, I know.
Oh my God.
It didn't even faze me. I was just like, Welcome to Spoiler Piece Theater, the podcast that doesn't give a shit about spoilers. We just want to talk about the movies. My name is Dave Riedel. I write sometimes for Salt Lake City Weekly, and I'm a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s Movie Guide to Better Living.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network, and I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us this week. We're going to be talking about Sundance, the Sundance Film Festival.
Sundance.
Right.
Down and dirty in the film festival.
Exactly. So I just wanted to mention real quickly, though, we're going to be talking about a lot of movies on the show this week. And we are also going to be talking about Sundance movies over on our Patreon. So please go over there, sign up, and, blah, blah. Patrons listen to movies from Sundance. I didn't really plan that out. So
we had too much we wanted to say, so we felt like we needed to spill over into bonus material. We just got so much to say about Sundance, so many movies to talk about.
So many movies to talk about, and they're all terrible. No, that's not true. I don't mean to rain on anyone's parade. They're actually the movies we're talking about are the movies that we like. So there you go. So let's kick it off. Evan, you saw First Date, which is, I don't know anything about it other than it's called First Date, and I was supposed to see it, and then I slept through it. So why don't you take it away?
Well, it's a shame you did, Dave, because First Date was probably the most fun that I had at Sundance in terms of like movie watching. It was, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's directed by Manuel Crosby and Darren Knapp, and it's just like a really fun, like midnight kind of movie. It's about this kid who gets a date with this girl, and he has no car, so he goes to buy this like really crappy car from this guy who's very shady. And buying that car sets off a crazy series of misadventures that involve some run-ins with cops and drug dealers, and it's pretty nuts.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Dark comedy, action, some violence, and it's, for me, I thought it was really reminiscent of some of the Coen brothers movies in terms of the way it kind of blends comedy, action, violence, all that stuff together in this, I don't know, just a fun, light movie. I just feel like so many of the movies I saw at Sundance were heavy. You know, they're on like weighty things, and this is just like a light, fun romp. with some just really quirky, oddball characters. Like there's the cops who he keeps running into for various different reasons, who are both very funny, and the crooks, who are equally funny because they're just all nuts. Like, and they all have like weird things that they get pissed about. Like they have some book club that they're doing, and they're arguing about this book club, and then there's just like one of them's mad that people put their feet on the table in this house that they're robbing. It's just like they get into all these like silly fights, and they're just have all kinds of zany antics. So yeah, I really enjoyed First Date. It's a lot of fun, and I highly recommend it.
Okay. Well, I mean, that short review spoiler pieced me into it. Hey, rock and roll.
Nice.
Do we know anything about, I should have asked you this before we started the show, but do we know anything about if it's being released, when it's being released, blah, 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 stuff like that?
No clue.
Okay.
No clue where it's headed. Hopefully to somewhere watchable.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. I will then, if you have nothing else to say about First Date, it sounds like you're all finished.
Yeah.
Okay. I will move on to Flea, which is not a movie about the bassist from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I don't know why. Every time, even when I say the name of this movie, F-L-E, Flea, I think of Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers. I don't know why. Flea is a documentary, Danish documentary by, I don't know how to pronounce this guy's name, Jonas Poher Rasmussen. That's probably it. Close it. Jonas Rasmussen. He has a friend named Amin, and he's known him for 20-ish years. They met in high school. And the only thing you really know about Amin is that he's a refugee. Somehow, Jonas got him to tell his life story. And basically, it's this heartbreaking story about Amin, born in Afghanistan and forced to flee the country, and he ends up in Russia, and then he goes here, and then he's sent back to Russia, and then he goes here, and he's sent back to Russia, and his family split up, and part of the family's in Sweden, and his father is disappeared by the the Afghan government back in Afghanistan. And I had really wanted to see this, and then the thing about it that kind of I was hung up on is that it's animated. It's almost entirely animated. And animation in documentaries has, to me, become a crutch, and it really pisses me off. So when I realized I was watching an animated movie, I was like, God damn it! And then I was sucked into the story and forgot that it was animated. So when done well, it can be done well. And you understand why they would do it. If you were going to make a documentary about this man's life story and try to get the real people involved and I don't even know how you would do it. It would be all talking heads, and it would be it'd just be boring and dull. And to do this, then they animate the stories. They animate living in Russia with his family. They animate, them being hassled by, Russian police. They animate him meeting someone in the airport, who's going to one country and he's going to another, and they're both with the same trafficker, but telling it's just such a heartbreaking and harrowing story, and you kind of wonder how this man, who's now 36 years old, how he pulled through with anything resembling a functional life. It's a fascinating story. I can't recommend it highly enough. So that's my big, the only movie that I saw that you guys didn't see. I would really, really, really recommend it. There you go. That's that.
I wanted to see it, but it was sold out.
Oh, was it? Okay. See, yeah, I initially bought the tickets because it was like the last movie, or did I can't remember if I bought it or if I was, it doesn't matter. I got in. I didn't realize it was so popular. But anyway, that's another story for another time. Megan, why don't we talk about Passing?
Oh my God, yes. So Passing is one of my absolute favorite films that I saw at Sundance. It was also one of my most anticipated films. And this is Rebecca Hall's directorial debut.
Oh, that's this movie. Okay.
Yes. And she adapted it from Nella Larson's novel. And Nella Larson was a biracial Afro-Caribbean woman during the Harlem Renaissance. And this stars Tessa Thompson and Ruth Negga. And This film is so lovely and so gorgeous. The cinematography is exquisite and stunning. It's filmed in black and white, and there are just gorgeous costumes, gorgeous production design. And these two performances, I mean, Tessa Thompson and Ruth Negga are always amazing. They're incredibly talented and versatile actresses. But their performances in this are so good and so subtle. And there's just minute movements and details in their rapport with each other. And this takes place during the 1920s, and they are both Black women. But one of them is passing as a white woman, Ruth Negga, and Tessa Thompson is not because she can't, because she occasionally can pass as a white woman, depending on if she has, like, she, in the opening scenes of the film, she has a hat that kind of shields her face, and she's very cautious when she's around white people. But she chooses not to pass, and she lives in Harlem, and she has a Black husband and dark-skinned Black children. And Ruth Negga is talking about how she's so glad her child is light and passes for white because her husband is white. And the two women are childhood friends, and they haven't seen each other since they were kids, and they're reunited in Chicago. No, I'm sorry, not Chicago, New York. And so their reunion is really, really interesting. And their lives become incredibly intertwined, and they become really fixated with each other. And Ruth Negga is extremely wealthy, and you find out that there's an amazing scene where Tessa Thompson meets her husband, and her husband is saying denigrating things about Black people, and she's kind of asking more and more questions. And he's like, "Oh no, I don't dislike them. I hate them." And he's talking about how Ruth Negga, his wife, is like never around Black people because she hates them too, and she won't even have a Black maid. And the two women are like eyeing each other because obviously Tessa Thompson knows the truth about her, but this white racist does not know the truth about his wife. So Ruth Negga increasingly, even though she has all this freedom due to her wealthy status and her class, she feels increasingly trapped. And so, yeah, and Tessa Thompson becomes more and more jealous of her because she's spending a lot of time in her house and with her husband. And it's such a fascinating film. And it, in addition to exploring and examining race and gender and class and the intersection of them, it also shows how, and I said this on Twitter, it shows how jealousy poisons and what happens when the facade of a meticulous identity that you've crafted for yourself, when that cracks. And it's such an intriguing film, and there's so many layers and so much depth to their relationship and their performances. And it's a beautiful, exquisite film, and I cannot say enough good things about it.
Interesting. I wanted to see it. I couldn't.
Same.
I was interested that Rebecca Hall, who I think she's white, right?
Rebecca Hall is white, yes.
Yeah, adapted it and directed it, which I just thought was, I don't know, I don't really have an opinion about it. I just was like, oh.
I mean, I had an opinion. I was curious because whenever white people direct, or write a film that's taking place about Black characters, it often can be very dicey and seen through a white lens. But this is it's very clear. It's very clear to me that she either very much was deferential to Nella Larsen's work, or I would not. And I unfortunately did not watch the Q&As after the film, but I would not be surprised if the two women didn't have a lot of input on certain things, being Black women and having different insights than obviously a white woman would. But yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful, masterfully directed film.
Yeah, I really wish I had seen it. I'm guessing that Alexander Skarsgård is the racist husband. That's a guess.
He is, and he is so good in it. He's vicious. And Andre Holland is in it. He plays Tessa Thompson's husband, and he's wonderful as always.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah, it builds to a surprising and kind of shocking ending.
Oh, okay.
That I watched a couple of times because I was so intrigued.
Got it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Now I'm like even more intrigued.
Yeah. Definitely going on the list.
Yay.
Well, then let's move on to a movie that two of you have seen. I think you have both seen Marvelous and the Black Hole.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Was it marvelous, and is there a black hole?
Yes,
There's
to
a
the
black
first.
hole.
Where was the black hole?
The black hole's the tattoos they get, the matching tattoos.
That's right. That's what it was. Ugh, man, I just looked at it and I was like, oh, a circle.
No, because they're talking about they need something to celebrate the cosmic force in their lives and this momentous occasion. And oh, Evan.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know that wasn't a dad joke, but oh.
I was confused. I was like, why is it just a circle?
That's amazing.
Well, somebody please, maybe Megan, maybe you should summarize this one.
Sure. So Sammy is a 13-year-old girl. She's an Asian American girl, and her mother has died, and she is angry as fuck. And she's angry, and she gets in trouble, and she gets into fist fights, and she's just, oh my God, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm just going to sound so old. She's a hellion, and she's just so full of rage. And I love that about her, that she's just angry, and I love it. And her father's going to send her to essentially like a boot camp type school. So he's like, if you don't, if you don't take this class at a community college and turn your act around. So she's taking this business class in the summer, and she comes upon accidentally, kind of in the bathroom of the school, Rhea Perlman, who is a magician, and she's a magician for kids. And she kind of becomes her assistant, and it is about their friendship and Rhea Perlman's mentorship of her. And it's this really, really beautiful and lovely film. That's by Kate Sang, who wrote and directed it. And it's either Tang or Sang. But it's just a lovely film. I thought this was absolutely delightful. I love the girl and Rhea Perlman's, Sammy and Rhea Perlman's rapport. I love that. And it's just, it's a really good exploration of rage and of grief and being a teenager and how much that sucks. And
yeah, I couldn't agree more. It really is a delightful and uplifting movie given the topic. It's about unexpected friendship. It's about learning to cope with grief. And I love that it's not minimizing. There's a really great line where Rhea Perlman looks at her and says like something to the effect of like, you'll never get over losing a loved one. You'll heal, and you won't be the same. But like, life does go on. And I thought that was really a poignant moment between the two of them, because Sammy just has so much anger, and understandable anger, especially given the fact that both her dad and her older sister have seem like they've really moved on, and they're grieving much more quietly. And like her dad is like gonna get remarried, and that's like a whole point of drama in the movie. And yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's really funny and sweet. And one of the lines where we laughed the hardest was when she's first asking Sammy to be her assistant. She's like, "What's your name?" And she goes, "Sammy." And Rhea Perlman just goes, "Ugh." She's like, "Ugh, all right, fine, it'll do." But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I really enjoyed this movie, and I liked the the group of magicians that they hung out with. Like I loved the Puck, who was played by Jonathan Slavin, I think is his last name. I've seen him in a lot of things in bit roles, and I really, really liked him in this part. I thought he was a really good supporting character.
I agree. I also like Sebastian the rabbit.
Oh yeah, Sebastian was the best.
Yes, but no, I have to say, I feel like, I mean, I'm by no means a magic aficionado, but I feel like whenever there's magic in a film, like there's a magician, it feels like it's usually kind of cheesy, or I don't know. But this actually felt, there was something really charming about Rhea Perlman's magic performances. And Sammy asks her, she's like, "You're really good. Why are you, doing this for kids? You could be professional." and do it for, more professional and do it for adults and probably be more successful. And Rhea Perlman, I love that she says, I love seeing kids smile. And, it's just as simple as that. And then, but of course, you find out more about her backstory and you find out she has a really tragic backstory too, that her parents died and it's awful, like how they died. And, I also love that Sammy inspires her to go look for her family too. So they both make each other better people.
Better people? What?
Mm-hmm.
No, just trying to be a jerk. Sorry.
But yeah, loved this movie. Quite a bit of fun.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really charming and lovely. And I remember Kate saying, the director saying she wished she had this movie or a movie like this when she was growing up. And I can definitely see why.
Okay. Well, gang, do you guys want to move it on to how it ends? How does it end?
With a giant asteroid? Is it an asteroid, a meteor? I never forget the right term.
Asteroid.
I can never remember it. Sorry.
Yep, it's an asteroid.
So is this like Armageddon, but without like dudes drilling holes in an asteroid? What is this?
No, it's more like She Dies Tomorrow, but with an asteroid and less dread and ennui and more lighthearted, quirky charm.
I wanted to see this too, but didn't. Is this Zoe Lister-Jones?
It sure is, whom I love.
Yeah.
Same.
Yep.
I know. I feel like, Evan, you and I have like a Zoe Lister-Jones kind of kinship pact since we interviewed her together.
Yeah. I feel like we bonded over interviewing her about Band-Aid, which was quite a fun experience.
Oh, I know. That was a fun experience, and I love that movie too. But yeah, I loved this. I thought this was such a great kind of quirky, charming sci-fi that really digs into some really serious issues about existentialism and self-confidence and regret and making mistakes and connection. And yeah, I really loved this.
I felt kind of annoyed because I saw a lot of people on Twitter kind of crapping on this movie and complaining about, it's loaded with all these comedians and Hollywood people, and it just feels like people saying things like this was really twee, and I just,
I don't agree.
I'm not about that. Like, I think this is a legitimately funny movie and also very poignant, and I think it's just, I don't know, it uses the idea of the apocalypse in a really smart way to have this like introspective story about closure and self-acceptance, and it's just done in a really fun and clever way. Like, I love the idea that like she's walking around with her younger self and her younger self as a character, and for some reason on this day other people can see her younger self and interact with her, and I don't know, I like that. I think that was a nice touch.
And by the way, that actress is the protagonist in The Craft, and I love that. And they have such a lovely dynamic rapport with each other and very natural. I found it so incredibly delightful that that's her kind of sidekick in her trek, her on foot trek across LA to kind of make amends to people. And I just want to say something about the comedians. I mean, I feel like I'm so annoyed by those kinds of statements, and I'll tell you why. On this film specifically, this film was filmed during quarantine. So it's very clear to me that Zoe Lister-Jones probably got people she either was friends with or worked with before. Like, I think Kaylee Jones is her name. It's Kaylee something. I can't think of her last name. The girl who plays her younger self, and also Colin Hanks, because they were on a
Kaylee
TV
Spaney.
show. Kaylee Spaney, thank you. I don't know where I got Jones, probably Zoe Lister-Jones. But anyway, and Colin Hanks, and they were on a TV show together. So it's very clear to me that she picked people that she's, either worked with or friends with or both. So, I mean, like, I want to be like, cut her some slack, because I'm saying her, but actually she co-directed it with Daryl Wine. But yeah, cut them some slack. It was filmed during quarantine, like in a pandemic. So
yeah,
I don't know. Be a little more, I feel like, magnanimous.
Agreed. And I mean, like, that's part of this charm too, is that they're walking around and they're doing, for the most part, socially distanced kind of scenes, like physically distant.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think it makes for a funny scene. Like, I love Bradley Whitford as her kooky, like, hippie dad,
Yes.
and Helen
Mhm.
Hunt as her mom. I thought that was an incredible exchange. But I liked even the sillier ones where, Fred Armisen is, like, the younger version of some, like, 80-year-old guy who's sitting inside.
Or Nick Kroll, the, like, drug dealer.
Yeah, whose younger self died. I thought that was
Yes.
hilarious. He died, he fell off a cliff.
But I have to say, even though there's, like, so many, like, silly, idiosyncratic moments, this movie, like, surprisingly gutted me. Like, the scene with Helen Hunt, the scene where Kaylee Spaney and Zoe Lister-Jones are walking and they come across the woman playing guitar and they sing with her. Like, I was, like,
Mhm.
crying at that moment. And then at the end, when they're sitting on the beach together, and, like, the whole time Zoe Lister-Jones' character has been talking about how she deserves to be alone and she's all alone and she has nobody else. And Kaylee Spaney keeps telling her, like, no, you have me. And she's like, you don't count. And she's been kind of chasing seeing her ex again and, rekindling their romance. And their reunite, when they reunite, it's really sad but sweet. She confesses that she's in love with him and he says he loves her. But then he's like, let's just leave it at that. So it's this perfect moment. And I'm like, ooh. And then
Right.
and then she goes to the beach to find, Kaylee Spaney, and she's like, I love you. And she's like, when I say you don't count, it's not you, it's me who doesn't count. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm crying.
Yeah.
And because it really is this moment of self-acceptance and, realizing your own worth. And she does that, at the end of the world. And I don't know. I loved this. I thought it was great.
Sweet.
Mhm. Yeah, that scene on the beach was great too, because I feel like
Yes.
Zoe Lister-Jones gives Kaylee Spaney the, like, rom-com, like, speech.
Yes.
She's, like, giving herself the, like, I love you, and this is all the small reasons why I love you speech.
Right. Because it's all set up that it's going to be this amazing moment with this guy that she's in love with. But no, really, the love that she needed to cultivate was with herself.
Aw.
Mhm.
Aw. Well, that's
Call me
cool.
a sap if you must, but I liked it.
Hey,
I don't care. I liked it too.
I love this shit. You guys know how I feel about the rom-coms. Let her fucking fall in love with herself. Who gives a shit?
That's right. Damn it.
Well then, perhaps, gang, unless you have anything else to say.
Nope.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
I don't know about you, Evan, but know me.
Okay. Well, let's bring our own brigade to Bring Your Own Brigade, Megan.
Oh man. This documentary.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I don't know. This is a documentary about mostly the campfire and the Malibu forest fires from 2018. And I didn't realize that so many people died in the campfire.
Yeah.
I had no idea. 85.
Do you mean in the Paradise Fire?
Well, yes, the Paradise Fire. It started.
Okay.
It started. It was called the campfire. Is the Paradise? Yes, Paradise,
yes,
California.
Yes, you're right. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I was following you.
Yeah. So anyway, the thing that I find this fascinating, which probably no one else will, is it's called Bring Your Own Brigade, meaning bring your own fire brigade. And the writer director of this documentary is an English woman, and they call their firefighters the fire brigade. So I just thought that it was kind of funny that this English woman who's been living in the United States for a very long time still uses fire brigade in the title of her very American movie. But whatever.
Well, it also is a line in the film, though, that an American says.
That's true.
Yeah, when talking about the privatization of firefighters and how that's what rich people are doing, and that someday it's going to come to that.
That's true.
If you're rich, you can save your house. If you're poor, you can't.
Right.
Yeah, but this film, I have to say, I don't know about you, Dave, but the first 40 minutes, which is it's amazingly edited. It's all footage from people's cars with their phones. Right. Driving through fires and seeing fires. I was sobbing, like literally sobbing, because it's so intense and harrowing and heartbreaking and dangerous.
It was hard to watch and hard to listen to. You hear that 911 call where it's clear that the woman who's on the phone is dying, burning alive.
Yeah.
And it's rough stuff.
Yeah. But then it gets to that's already interesting, but then it shifts, because then it's that, it's about the people who survived the fire and it's about the firefighters. And it's so interesting that Lucy Walker, the director, she said she had every intention that it was going to go in this one direction and she was going to follow this woman firefighter, but that's not the direction it went
Right.
in. And it ended up being this kind of, I don't want to say like this kind of issue, issues with, corporate issues and, this lumber company and how, because they're clear cutting, that's increasing fires. And then, the debate around climate change and how she just assumed that it was all because of climate change. And that's certainly exacerbating it, but it's not all that. Oh my God. It just, it takes so many different turns and so looks at it from so many different angles.
Yeah. The bottom line though is that right now it's a perfect, for lack of a better term, powder keg for catastrophic, out of control forest fires. What do we call them even?
Yeah.
The combination of raping the land, the warming planet, and negligence is destroying California and the earth. So drink up. If what else can you do?
Well, but that brings it also to where the documentary goes too, about what can you do. And they had these city council meetings in Paradise, and they had all these ballot initiatives, they had all these issues, like what people could do, like they could have no hedges or anything 5 feet
right,
next to their, like, it had to be 5 feet away, no gutters, no satellite dishes, nothing on top of the roof. Like you had to have a shed with your combustible equipment, like all of these things to either stop fires from happening or spreading, or mitigate that. And the council members voted every single one of them down.
Yeah.
And it's appalling. And I remember like her saying, she was sitting in the front row and she's like, it was quite the civics lesson that day. Yeah.
No kidding.
Horrifying.
Yeah. All of these things that are really, really easy to do that will, like, the difference between putting your combustibles in, I don't know, your home or a shed 15 feet away from it. I don't know why you think that infringement upon your rights as an American is worth losing your home and or life over. But apparently for a lot of people, it's worth it.
That was so anger inducing when people are talking about Paradise is a unique, town. We want to keep it that way. We want to keep it independent. And I'm like, you'd rather fucking lose your house to a fire because they're telling you to plant some hedges 5 feet away from your house and not have a goddamn satellite dish? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? Like, oh my God, it was horrifying. Absolutely horrifying.
This is where the misanthrope in me comes out. If I've learned anything since roughly November 7th, 2016, it's that people are really fucking stupid and selfish. So, and you put those two qualities together and it's deadly. It's literally deadly. So there you go.
But also what's interesting about that too, what I'm also reminded of, or thinking about, you talking about, people being stupid, is thinking on kind of the flip side, thinking about the humanity of people and the generosity, and how the people in those council meetings were blaming firefighters because they want someone to blame.
Right.
And the firefighters, were saying that they were really hurt and upset by that. And they're like, we're risking our lives here. And one guy was like, I haven't seen my family in 8 days because I'm out here fighting fires, and helping people. And then listening to the firefighters talk about the struggles that they face and, the high rates of alcoholism and, drug addiction and divorce and suicide and PTSD. Yeah. And it was hard. I mean, it makes sense, of course, but it's just so heartbreaking that this incredibly dangerous and demanding job is just putting so much stress on not just their careers, but their personal lives too. It's awful.
Yeah. I actually, one of the few civic duties that I have respect for, is firefighting, because these are people who choose to run into fire.
Yes.
Which, I kind of think that of all the deadly things that you could do that is rather selfless, that's it, because I've known a few firefighters personally in my day, and they're all decent people. I mean, they've got their problems, et cetera, et cetera. But there really is this, you don't become a firefighter because it's like, oh, I'm a firefighter. It's because you want to help people. It really is true.
Right.
It's not like you want to become a cop because you have a small penis and want to fire a gun. You become a firefighter.
You're on a power trip.
Yeah, you become a firefighter because you want to help people out. So
right.
I can understand why those firefighters, some of them were just like, dude, like, I fucking watched 7 people burn alive yesterday. Quit yelling at me. You know, like there are so many layers to this movie. Just
Oh
like
my God, so many.
the director whose name escapes me, even though you've said it
Lucy
several times.
Walker.
Thank you. Said several times. It's just like, I mean, prepare to laugh, cry, be angry, etc. All in. I had this film professor who used to say, I'm going to do his accent badly, but he's like, if film make you laugh or cry or give you the goosebump is good film. if film does all 3 things is great film. And this film does all 3 things. And that was his only criteria. If it did one of those things, it was a good film. If it did all 3, it was a great film.
All right.
So I guess Pump Up the Volume is a great film. So
nice.
We digress.
So I would highly recommend The World to Come for sure.
Yeah. My only quibble with it is where it ends. I would have rather it ended somewhere else, but that is such a minor tweaking.
Remind me about the ending.
It ends with the wedding.
Right.
Yeah. But other than that, that ending, which I can understand why she chose, because it's, it's upbeat, it's hopeful. I get it. But other than that, the fact that this covers so much terrain, the fact literally and metaphorically, the fact that it's looking at firefighting from a class issue, not just from an environmental issue, looking at Malibu, which is such a wealthy community, and how they handle it, and how, there was an architect talking about his own house being protected because of the way he built it, and the way other people are having trendy houses, which are not up to fire code in the way that they should. They're technically up to fire code, but not really. And the increasing of trees, so it looks like a tropical paradise. Anyway, and there's also talk of indigenous people and how indigenous people use fire in, their culture and in healing, and fire is not seen as an enemy the way it is for many people, but it's seen as a beneficial tool and part of nature.
And I want to add that the indigenous people don't burn things to the ground accidentally.
No, they don't.
So there's that too.
Yeah, I mean that is the thing, that fire is meant to clear away, dead shrubs and brush, but the problem is the way the fires are now is that they're burning hotter, they're burning faster, they're killing, large trees, which they shouldn't be doing. If a fire is, quote, natural, it wouldn't be doing that. It would just be clearing away this small brush. But anyway, it is covering so much ground, so many layers to this. It's fascinating. I was absolutely riveted.
Agree. Totes agree. I don't know if it's an Evan movie, but it's not an Evan movie. Let me put it that way.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, you like a good documentary just because you like a good documentary. So this might be right up your alley.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have me interested.
Yeah. So The World to Come, starring what's her name? Catherine Waterston?
Yep, and Vanessa Kirby.
And in a small role, Casey Affleck as Catherine Waterston's husband. And I can't remember the actor who plays
Christopher Abbott.
I was going to say Christopher Abbott, but
Sundance darling.
Yeah. Anyway, he plays the world's biggest asshole.
Yes.
And I have mixed feelings about this movie. I do. And probably predictable mixed feelings. So let me just go through it real quick. I love the fact that you have a nice, good old-fashioned queer love story set during the 19th century, pre-Civil War. I mean, because why not?
Well, lesbians and queer people have been around forever. So
exactly. And I love that it takes its time getting where it's going, and it's very lyrical, and there's it's very it pays attention to language.
Yes, it's extremely poetic.
Yes. But it also made me mad, spoiler alert, that the husband kills his lesbian wife. Because it's just like, can we just stop killing the queer people, please? I mean, I know that it happens all the time in real life, and movies should reflect what happens in real life to a degree, but Jesus Christ, can we just give me a happy ending?
That's funny that you say that. That's so funny that you say that, Dave, because that is my one problem with the film, is that it plays into the bury your gays trope. And as a queer woman, I don't want to see dead queer people on screen, even though I feel you. Like, I get what it's going for. It's trying to explore, the sexism and patriarchy and, queerphobia. Like, I get all of it, but still and I've seen this film 3 times and I love it. Like, I love it that much. And I think this is a beautiful film. Mona Fastvold did a stunning job adapting this film. But that is my one problem with it is that ending.
Yeah.
That the only way they can have a happy ending is in her imagination.
Right. And which you can see the ending coming a mile away for 2 reasons. One, her husband basically says halfway through the movie, "Hey, did you hear about the husband who killed his wife because she wouldn't put out?" I'm paraphrasing, of course.
Not quite how he says it, but yes.
It's a Dave paraphrase.
Yes, it's a more veiled threat, but it's definitely a threat nonetheless, talking about men poisoning their wives.
Right. And also just because Catherine Waterston's character, whose name escapes me, Abigail, thank you, has been writing. She's been keeping 2 journals. She's been keeping the regular, "this is what I do for work on the farm" journal. And then she's been keeping this personal history ever since her daughter died of diphtheria. Ugh, poor thing. When the movie started, and I was like, "Is this a dead child movie?" And then thankfully they're past, of course, but they're past that in 7 minutes. Thank God.
Yeah,
because you hear the poor little thing just coughing and. Anyway, so moving on, it then becomes a dead adult woman movie. What? Fuck me. So
by the end,
by the end, but you do get about an hour and a half of just this really lovely love story of these 2 people, these 2 women finding each other. There's no indication as to what their lives were like before or after before really. I mean, they kind of mentioned "Oh, I was like this and I grew up like this," but we don't know if there were any, if they had any, dalliances with the fairer sex themselves earlier in their lives. I don't know. Fuck. So,
but that doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying that, it's.
But you're just kind of curious.
It's a finite. No, I'm not curious. It's
oh.
it's a finite. It begins here and it ends here. There's no before or after. You know what I mean? So,
well, I don't agree with you, actually.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, I mean, well, if you're talking about the queerness of them, you could possibly be right, because you're right. We don't have any hard facts. I actually think that there are some clues, though, that Vanessa Kirby has been queer. I mean, arguably, they both are queer women, and they've been queer women their whole lives, even if they haven't had a quote unquote queer relationship until now. Mm-hmm. But I get the sense that Vanessa Kirby was queer earlier and either knew it, maybe didn't act on it. Same with Catherine Waterston. I think there are very minor clues. So Catherine Waterston is narrating the whole entire film. Yeah. And I normally don't like narration, but this narration is so poetic and so hypnotic that I just loved it. I fell into this trance. And in the beginning, she talks about how everything is terrible. It's very clear, she's going down the line of all this drudgery. She's doing this work, today we ate this, today we did this, today we did this. It's it's so just kind of rote. And so to me, her life was kind of like that too. But at the same time, when she's watching Tally, who's Vanessa Kirby, she talks about how she's always been like a potted plant curved in on herself. And you could interpret that she's just always been awkward, socially awkward. I thought of it as though that she might have always been queer, had kind of curiosities, if you will. And with Tally talks about her. We don't get as much insight into her state of mind, aside from the letter near the end of the film that she writes to Abigail. But she says to Abigail about her husband, who's a dick. She says to him, she's like, I told him I'm not doing my wifely duties anymore. And, she kind of declared that. Right. And I got the sense that might not be the only time she's ever decided that. So I also got the sense that it's very possible she also was aware of her queerness before that, possibly.
I got the feeling that she was aware of it, but like you had suggested before, that maybe she hadn't acted on it, and that this time she was going to. Because the first time they get together, she actually pulls away from Catherine Waterston kisses her, and she pulls away briefly. And she's kind of like, you can kind of tell she's making up her mind. She's like, okay, am I doing this or not? Okay, I'm doing it. That kind of surprised me because she has been, I mean, I don't know what if I'd use the word flirty. I don't know. She so clearly feels very warmly, for lack of a better term, to Abigail. She just, she really just thinks Abigail is like the fucking best.
Yeah, I think they're both incredibly flirty with each other and have an incredibly emotional and tender rapport with each other, but also a very sensual one.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're totally into each other, digging each other right from the start. And even right from when they first see each other.
Yeah.
And Abigail's like saying to her husband, she's like, who's that? And like Tally keeps like turning around in the wagon and looking back at her. Like the very first time they saw each other, the female gaze is full on happening, and I'm so into it.
Yeah. And it's in that very, 19th century way. It's like understated and like stolen glances and things like that. And, until it becomes, more overt.
Yes.
And it's really well done. And it's, it's kind of funny. I think you said when we were off mic that it's kind of slow paced, and I didn't feel like it was slow paced at all. I felt like it was, sort of perfectly.
Oh, I should have clarified. I didn't think it was slow paced at all either. I think it's a film that other people might consider slow paced.
Ah, yes, yo comprendo. I think that if this is not your bag, then it is not your bag. You're not going to sit there and like wait for hot lesbian sex scenes, which won't ever happen, by the way.
Wait, did you say it doesn't happen? That's not true.
Well, at the very end, you get like kind of a mashup of all the diary entries, but that's not really.
Okay, well, this queer woman was into it. So
anyway. No, I'm not saying I wasn't into it, but that's not the only reason you're going to watch this movie. I hope.
No.
I mean,
you should watch this movie because it's beautiful cinematography, it's incredible performances, it's great dialogue. This is an amazing film. I loved this film, and yes, there's a problem with the ending, but I've been grappling with it ever since I saw it a few weeks ago the first time, and I still can't quite wrap my head around what would have been better other than just a happy ending with a bow on it. But no, I love this film. I think it's amazing.
Maybe if Casey Affleck or Catherine Waterston had shot and killed
she talks about that.
She does. She says if she ever has the opportunity to go back to Syracuse, she'll take her husband's rifle with her.
I love that.
I did too. And I have a feeling that she would do it if given the opportunity. But one thing I wanted to ask you, did you notice though that when they finally arrive when Casey Affleck and Catherine Waterston arrive at Tally and what's his fuck's home, and she's dead, did you notice that he's wearing all white? I just thought that was fascinating. I'm like, oh, the first time in the movie that he's happy, he's wearing all white because she's dead.
Oh, that you're right. I didn't put that the first time he's happy.
Yeah. And I mean, and who knows whether he's happy or not. I mean, he certainly like feels like a weight's been lifted from his fucking shoulders.
Oh my God. He's such a scumbag.
He really is.
He's a good scumbag. Though.
He is a good scumbag. And I also wanted to throw in a plug for Catherine Waterston, who I've never really been on board with. I've been like, I don't really understand what people see in this performer. And I'll tell you though, she fucking knocked my socks off in this movie. She is unreal. She will be a top 10, actor category for the women's side of things this year for me, for sure. So, okay, that was The World to Come, which I accidentally, yes, you loved it. I loved it. We all loved it.
This was my second of my top two favorites.
Okay, what was your first favorite?
Passing.
Got it. Just making sure. I was pretty sure, but just making sure.
Yeah, they're both like, it's pretty equal. It's like both of these are in the top two spots.
Okay, so let's move on then to Street Gang. Now I can say it. And I love the fact that the movie sounds like it's a movie about like gangs, street gang, how we got Sesame Street, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Well, except for the motherfucker part. That's not actually. Yeah.
They put that in parentheses because
this is a documentary about for kids. This is a documentary about Sesame Street, in case you couldn't tell. Evan, do you want to like fill in the listeners on the Muppets because you love them so much?
Yes, I do. I think I've said this on the Patreon. I don't know how often I've said it on the show, I love the Muppets and everything connected to the Muppets. So I was super excited to see a documentary about Sesame Street. And I think I said this on Twitter. Yes, I did cry several times during this documentary. As someone who doesn't cry very often during movies, this documentary knew how to pull on all the right heartstrings for me. I mean,
and all the Muppet strings.
Yes.
Because they're puppets.
Yeah, that's true. I'm surprised I didn't think of that myself.
I know. That was my own lame attempt at an Evan joke.
Dave was thinking it for you.
Yeah.
So then just picture me like Grover when he collapses from exhaustion after running around.
Over, under, through.
Oh my God.
I always love that song.
Grover, and I love your Grover impersonation, Dave.
Thank you. So I'm going to spoiler piece this and say that I was not enamored of this documentary. I'm sorry, Evan.
For shame.
Well, there are a lot of documentaries about Sesame Street, and I feel like they all kind of cover the same territory after a period of time. Like, you learn a few new things in this. Like, you hear from Bennett Cerf, which is very cool, who wrote some of the great Muppet songs, like Letter B.
Oh my God.
Yeah, what was he like? $8 million lawsuit later, or whatever he says.
That's so great.
And so I interviewed him once actually for a story. So that was yes, I interviewed him for a story once, and he was delightful, and he is delightful in this movie too. So it makes perfect sense that there you got two sources: this documentary and me saying that I interviewed him, which is true, and he's a delightful person. There you go. And I thought I really wanted to hear more about Henson, though. I mean, one of the things, and I feel like maybe it's because he's been dead forever now, but I feel like we don't really get much Jim Henson in a lot of these movies. It's like, what I did appreciate about this, though, was that I've seen a lot of Muppet documentaries. I finally got to hear from Maria, who I feel like I haven't heard from before.
Maria's the best.
Yeah, and heard from Louise.
Maria and Bob.
Yeah.
And Louise. Oh, Louise. And Gordon. I love them all.
But this is like literally the third or fourth time I've seen a documentary where they talk about how Big Bird learns about death and how that teaches children about death. And as important and poignant as it is, I'm tired of crying over that. So just knock it the fuck off.
Well, I'm not tired of crying about Mr. Hooper dying. So I was glad that was in there.
Yeah, that was one of the times I cried. And it was rough.
You can't have a Sesame Street documentary and not talk about that. I mean, that was such a game-changing scene for a children's program.
Blah, blah, blah. You know that Mr. Rogers in like the first fucking month of his show talked about Bobby Kennedy's assassination? I mean, it's,
Listen, that is also a game-changing moment. Not taking anything away from Mr. Rogers. He's also lovely.
He is lovely. Was lovely because he's not with us anymore. But
that is correct.
So I felt like I just didn't learn a lot of things that I didn't know already, which is why I didn't dig it as much, I think, as you guys did. But I still.
Well, I actually didn't say that I dug it or did not.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Did you dig it or not dig it?
So I'm kind of somewhere in between the two of you. So I grew up on Sesame Street. I loved Sesame Street. I love the Muppets as well. So I was also like you, Evan. I was super, super pumped. And I was also prepared for the waterworks because Evan, you sat next to me during the Mr. Rogers documentary and I was a fucking disaster mess. Yeah. And the funny thing about that is I didn't even grow up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood very often, but Sesame Street I did. So I was like all prepared. I'm going to sob my face off. And I didn't. For me, I think it's a good documentary. It gives good information. I love the behind the scenes information, which is really fascinating. But for me, it lacked a lot of emotional impact until about the last 30 minutes or so, like when they dig into the Mr. Hooper death scene and some, other information that comes after that. But yeah, for me, it wasn't as emotional, which is interesting because like I said, the Mr. Rogers documentary, I literally was sobbing in the first 3 minutes and throughout the entire thing. So I don't want to compare, but it's also hard not to compare two documentaries that came out within a couple of years of each other that are about beloved children's programs. So yeah, I think it was a good documentary. So Dave, I definitely liked it a lot more than you did, but I don't think I'm at the level that you are at, Evan, in loving it, but I liked it. I thought it was enjoyable.
That's fair. I mean, for me, it's, hearing about how they came up with the ideas for Sesame Street and it being a very unique combination of entertainment and education. I found that part all really fascinating. I can agree with Dave. I would always appreciate more Jim Henson, but I'm gonna say I was dying laughing when they were showing all those ads that Jim Henson did with Muppets that were like,
oh yeah,
really fucking dark ass comedy. And I was like, where have these been my whole life? These are fucking hilarious and they're so twisted. And I love that sense of humor and seeing that contrast of just stuff that was like really kind of like rude humor and comparing it to what we were used to seeing from the Muppets on Sesame Street, which was so different, but like also hilarious seeing outtakes and seeing them goofing around as the Muppets. I always enjoyed that kind of stuff. And
yeah. The stuff where Bert and Ernie were like griping at each other about getting their lines wrong. That was funny.
Mhm.
It was.
And the other thing that I liked, which I'm kind of surprised this hasn't, maybe it has been covered in other documentaries and I missed it, but when, was it Jane Cooney, is that her name? I can't remember. The woman who created.
Yeah, Joan Cooney.
Joan Cooney, the woman, I should know that name. Joan Cooney, who created Sesame Street, more or less, how her idea was to basically you're advertising learning to children. I hadn't heard it explained in quite that way before.
But it's genius.
Yeah, it's great. And it worked, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But just hearing her tell that, I think it was she who told that story about how like she heard kids singing that Budweiser commercial and she's like, Jesus fucking Christ, what the fuck is this? You know? Those are my words. Yeah, she didn't say Jesus fucking Christ. That was me. But you know, that I found fascinating. I wish I had more of that stuff. You know, it's fine. It's fucking better than the documentary that came out a couple years ago about Carol Spinney. Jesus Christ. So, who played Big Bird?
Yeah. I was kind of surprised that this documentary, although it covered the deaths of some of the famous, you know, some of the more central people involved in the show, I was surprised that they didn't mention Carol Spinney's death when they were kind of going down that like path of talking about different people who've been lost in the last 30 years.
How long ago did he die? His death was relatively
within
recent,
the last like
it?
5 years for sure.
5 years? Okay. I thought it was like even sooner. I was thinking maybe it's like one of those things where they just didn't, you know, we got to wrap it up and get it ready for Sundance. We don't have time to add, 3 extra minutes. I don't know. But he had his own whole documentary.
Right.
Like,
so I thought maybe that's what they did. I think the only one other thing I wanted to mention is I could have seen more about Matt Robinson, who was the original Gordon, and his Muppet Roosevelt Franklin. I would love to know more about that story because it broke my heart hearing that he, you know, what he was trying to do and having a black Muppet and just hearing that people like, you know, pushed him out of doing that because it was something that was important to him and representation was important. And I think he was ahead of his time on that. I think we know now how important representation is, and it just kind of crushes me hearing that story about how he was pushed out from doing something that could have been really meaningful, but for people being really angry about it at the time.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. There's another thing I didn't know about Sesame Street that I learned in this documentary. That his daughter-in-law is Holly Robinson Peete. Anyway, not really sure why she's in this documentary, except that she is who she is, and she's married to his son. So whatever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is a lot of good information about that, you know, and the cast and the crew and the writers and the Muppeteers are all so ridiculously talented. Like it's mind-boggling how talented and versatile they are. So those are all great reasons to watch this documentary. I think my issue with it is more a personal issue that I let my expectations kind of get in the way as to what I thought this documentary would be and would do, you know, for my emotions. But I think this is a good, solid documentary and definitely worth watching if you're, you know, interested in TV history, if you grew up on Sesame Street, which so many of us did. I just have to say, I think it's so amazing that Sesame Street was intended to be geared towards inner city, impoverished children, specifically Black children. And the fact that a educational program was geared, you know, to a specific community that, you know, could be struggling educationally, I think that's just brilliant. And anyway, I just love Sesame Street.
Me too.
Yeah.
We can move on. I just love Sesame Street.
I think I've said everything that all the important stuff, but maybe we should move on to talk about Coda.
Yes, and it's fitting that this is our last movie and it's called Coda, which is not that kind of coda, although I guess it could be because there is singing and songs have codas, etc.
Right. But it's not the Michael Corleone variety.
No.
No.
So one of you, I'm sure, will correct me if I'm wrong, but CODA is, in this case, an acronym for Child of Deaf Adults. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Or
okay.
Either child or children, yes.
So this is, somebody else explain this. I've talked enough. This is a story about a kid who can hear, but her parents and her brother are deaf. There you go.
It's a good summation.
Yeah, you covered the important points.
It's a little underdone, but yeah.
And they're Fisher people in Gloucester, and Sean Heder, who wrote and directed this, she's from the Massachusetts area. She grew up in Cambridge, and so she sometimes likes to have her films here, and she has a personal connection here. Anyway, and the daughter wants to sing. She wants to be a singer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's this push and pull because she is the family's interpreter, and she helps everyone, her mother and father and brother, in the fishing business and in life, and she has dreams of being a singer and going to Berklee College of Music, and so there's just this constant push and pull of feeling obligation to her family, but also wanting to pursue her own dreams and to live her own life. And family members don't make it easy on her. They definitely rely on her very heavily. And there are some frustrating scenes where they really put a lot on her in terms of expectations.
Yeah. I appreciated the scene when she tells them, this is exhausting. Being your daughter is exhausting.
Yeah, it's a great scene.
But I also just kind of thought that the underlying, not message, because that's not what I mean, but that's the whole, this movie is about a young woman who can hear and who she can sing, and then her parents are deaf and her brother's deaf, and it's it just seems frankly, it's a little pat.
Yes, I was thinking that as I was watching it.
I mean, it doesn't mean that it isn't effective, but the whole time I'm watching this, I'm going couldn't we have gone down a more challenging road than this? Because this all seems like we've teed it up quite nicely. Even though the performances, I think, are quite fine overall. Mm-hmm. I especially really liked the father, the actor, Troy Koster, who played Frank Rossi, the father.
Yeah, he's really great.
And of course, Marlee Matlin you can't really go wrong with Marlee Matlin doing anything.
Nope, she's always great.
I think she's quite fine. I thought the brother wasn't great, but what do I know? And I really liked Eugenio, what's his last name? Derbez?
Oh, yes.
As the music teacher.
I loved him.
Yeah.
I thought he was great. I've only seen him in Spanish language movies before. So I was like, oh, hey. It's that guy from all the Spanish language comedies.
I know, he's a huge megastar.
Huge, yeah. I know.
I don't think people who are not Latinx here in the US understand how huge he really is.
Right.
I probably don't even fully grasp it, considering I'm not Latinx. I don't live in, Spanish speaking countries.
Right. And he's also a really physical comedian. So to see him in kind of this, he's not buttoned up. That's not the right term, but he's definitely not playing up his huge comedic gifts in this, even though his role he does have some comic relief to his part. Although he also has some, hey, kid, quit fucking around. I don't care if your family's deaf. Fucking sing.
Yeah.
Dumbass.
He's ruthless, but he's also so loving and so supportive. I'm when I was watching it, I was like, God damn, I wish I'd had a mentor like that. He's amazing.
Yeah. He saves her ass at the end too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which
he does.
Also thought was bullshit, but because I don't believe for a minute that the fucking Berklee people at the audition would be like, yeah, just let the fucking guy come in here and play that, whatever. I don't care if he's the class of 89. Fuck you.
I wouldn't have seen that happen either.
Yeah. But what I did appreciate though, in this movie that I thought was a good movie with some serious shortcomings, I appreciated the scene when he told Ruby that, she says that when she was younger, she got made fun of because she talked like a deaf person because she grew up as a young person, obviously in a deaf household. And he says to her at one point, you think you're the only person who's ever been made fun of because they talk funny? Hello? And it's like, yeah, of course people from fucking Massachusetts would make fun of his accent because people from Massachusetts are that kind of people. So
Ouch.
they are. I mean, come on. Have you lived in a more racist part of the country than the Boston area, even down?
Yes, actually, I have.
Oh my God. Well, I pity you because I'm always surprised that, let me put it this way. I'm always surprised that Massachusetts votes Democrat because I'm just like, really? You wouldn't believe what I heard at the grocery store the other day. So,
I'm not saying there are not racist people and that it's not highly segregated and has massive racism problems. I'm just saying, yeah, I've unfortunately lived in more racist places.
Yeah, well, that is unfortunate. But now you don't live there now, so
that's a whole other story. Yes.
Yeah, but I guess that also kind of maybe reinforces my point that since we're talking about weird racist tropes, outside of the movie Coda, that maybe this movie isn't as good as it thinks it is. I don't know, or as Sundance thinks it is. If I recall correctly, it won a shitload of awards, right?
Oh, it sure did. It won. Hold on. It won the U.S. Grand Jury Prize Dramatic, Directing Award U.S. Dramatic Special Jury Award for the ensemble cast, and the Audience Award U.S. Dramatic.
Yeah, well, I can see it winning.
It won 4 awards.
I can see it winning the Audience Award because it's a crowd pleaser.
It is,
and it's pretty effective as a crowd pleaser. And I also think that it's important to have deaf representation in movies because why wouldn't you? And I appreciate that so much of the movie is in sign language. I just kind of felt like you could this kind of has the same plot as Girls Just Want to Have Fun, with Sarah Jessica Parker from the 80s. It's just like, all right, you want to go dance, kid? Go ahead. All right, kid, you want to go sing at Berkeley? Go ahead. It's just that.
I mean, there's a lot of movies that have that kind of plot, though.
Oh, for sure. I guess what I'm saying is let's make a different movie. If we're going to make a movie about, a deaf family, let's, with one member of the family who's hearing, then how about we have a story that can't be told in a 1987 comedy about whether your dad's going to let you go to the dance competition or not? That's all I'm saying.
And I hear you, but I would say the fact that there is so much deaf representation in this film that is telling a different story, just by its very nature of having massively underrepresented population, that automatically changes the narrative right there. My one thing is that it is a really interesting angle to take. I would have actually loved it, though, if the protagonist was a deaf person rather than the hearing person in the deaf family. But that obviously would completely change the story and the lens and all of that. But I clearly liked this a lot more than you guys because I thought this was a really sweet, humorous film, that there were some tender moments. I thought this cast is incredibly likable. And yeah, I mean, is it a perfect film? No, of course not. But I did like it a lot. And I also, one of my favorite scenes is when her family goes to hear her at the concert. I say hear, which is ridiculous because they're deaf, but they go to see her at the concert and then all of a sudden it becomes silent and we're immersed in her parents' world.
I liked that.
Yeah. And they don't know what's really happening and they're looking around. They're watching other people for cues for when they stand and when they applaud because they can't hear a single thing. So I really liked that. And I also really, really liked, because I was worried that it was going down this kind of schmaltzy road. And then I really like that her brother calls her out and he's like, you don't need to save us. He's like, I'm not an idiot and I'm not some, invalid just because I'm deaf. And I really appreciated that there was a moment like that where he's kind of calling her out, where even though her family is so heavily reliant on her for her interpretation, or her interpreting skills, I really like that he's, pointing out that they can fully take care of themselves, so I just appreciated that.
I want to clarify that I did laugh, cry, and all of that during this, but I felt guilty doing it because I saw everything coming. So I guess that's what I mean. It's just so predictable. And what
you're not wrong at all.
What really helps is that the performances, except for the brother, who I didn't think was so great, the performances are outstanding all around, except for him. And I just want to make sure
you're not letting him off the hook.
But I did appreciate, the fact that he's kind of like, fuck her that she can hear. We can do all this shit. I did appreciate that there was a character who was like, he even calls her, I think, during the dinner scene when he storms out. He's like, oh yeah, poor Saint Ruby or whatever.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I appreciated that. And I appreciated the scene when the sound fades away and, you're seeing the concert as they would see it. And I was also moved when she starts signing during her audition what she's singing. And I kept waiting for that to happen. That's the one thing I was waiting for. I'm like, when is she going to fucking start signing what she's saying?
Yeah.
She's supposed to be still like fucking in tune with her parents and shit. Okay, there. She finally did it.
Right.
It's like it only took you an hour and 35 minutes.
Yeah. I think it's really solid movie. And I agree that it's predictable. And I felt like it was kind of slow for me too, like maybe a little longer than it needed to be, but I liked it. I mean, it's good. I don't understand why it won like 4 awards.
Yeah.
I still maintain, I think the fact that it was the opening film and it's a feel-good film, I think that carries it a long way.
Yeah. We should also mention it's a remake of a French movie because of course it is.
Yes.
That is true. This is the kind of movie that the French do. Let's take somebody, let the outsider, but who's actually the whatever. Fucking Diving Bell and Butterfly, blah, blah, blah. So
yeah, but like you, Evan, I am kind of surprised, and probably you too, Dave. I am kind of surprised that it won so many awards, just because there were so many other great films that played.
Yeah.
But I can also see why, because of the reasons I just said.
Yep. Well, okay. Anybody have anything else to add about Coda as a Coda before we sign off?
No.
Okay then. Well, I would love to tell everybody where you can see these movies, but not all of them have been picked up yet. Some of them have. I know that the one that we were just talking
Coda.
about, it's going to be on Apple Plus.
Yep.
Apple TV Plus or Apple Plus TV. I don't know which one they call it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think
I don't know
Apple
anything.
TV Plus, I think.
Thank you.
The World to Come actually has a release date as well.
Oh, okay. Please. Do you know what it is?
It's February 12th. That's when it comes out, I believe, in theaters. And then I think it's streaming a couple weeks after that.
Okay. So for all the other stuff, please check it out. I'm pretty sure all of this stuff will be making it out into the world. And that, gang, is what we have to say on this part of Spoiler Piece for the Sundance Film Festival. If you go over to our Patreon, we'll be talking about some other movies we didn't have time to get to. Namely, real quick, Mass, Land, Censor, and In the Same Breath. Those are 4 different movies, even though 3 of them have one-word titles. How weird. But anyway, I wanted to say, and I'm sure Megan and Evan also want to say, thank you to our editor, Otto Clamor. Thank you for making our lives easier each week by not having us edit this ourselves. You can find Spoiler Piece Theater anywhere you get podcasts. So you know where to get podcasts. Go there and get it. You can find us on our website, spoilerpiece.com. You can find us on social media. We're Spoiler Piece Theater on Facebook. We're at Spoiler Piece on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. You can email us if you wanted to get in touch, spoilerpiece@gmail.com, or you can give us a call
at 862-21-PEACE.
And you can leave us a voicemail and tell us, hey, I saw Coda, and Dave, you're an asshole. It's the best movie ever made. you can do that. I won't be offended. And if you just want to talk about other things too, that's fine too. And if you like the show, please rate and review us. Go to ratethispodcast.com/spoilerpiece. And if you really, really like the show, please join our Patreon. Remember, we'll be talking about more Sundance movies this week over there. We'd love to have you. It's patreon.com/spoilerpiece. And we would also like to personally thank our patrons.
So we'd like to say thank you to Bill Scahan, Sean Pensionar, Christopher Jensen, Bob Chipman, Charlie Nash, Davida Margolin, Zach Pigeon, Chris Wilkinson, Max Colville, Shona Glasgow, Rory Glenn, Shelley M. McCaskill, Mike, Lord of the Sith, Deirdre Crimmins, and Shauna Harris.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, patrons.
And that's it. So my name is Dave Riedel. I write sometimes for Salt Lake City Weekly. You can follow me on the social medias as Dave Sees Movies on Twitter, Letterboxd, and Instagram.
My name is Evan Crean. I'm co-chair of the Boston Online Film Critics Association and co-author of your 80s movie guide, Better Living. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd as Real Recon.
And my name is Megan Kearns. I'm a contributor to Edge Media Network. I too am a member of the Boston Online Film Critics Association. You can follow me on Twitter at OpinionSWorld and on Instagram and Letterboxd at TheOpinionS.
And we will see you next week, gang. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.